Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet, the voice you know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by BASF, where you can count on the trusted performance of Elevo seed treatment to protect your soybean crop. I'm Joe Everett, bringing you today's farm news. President Donald Trump has announced a new round of support for America's farmers. A $12 billion package of a one-time bridge payments aimed at helping producers weather markets, high input costs, and ongoing trade uncertainty. He says the funding will come from tariff revenue collected over the past year. According to the USDA, the goal is to give farmers stability as they market this year's crop and start planning for 2026. Farmers will need to have their acres reported by December 19th, and payments are expected to go out February 28th of next year. For more details, you can find this full article at ohioagnet.com. Well, the White House ordered an investigation into food price fixing. Axios said President Donald Trump is facing rising pressure about the inflation of food prices at the nation's grocery stores. The president issued an executive order last weekend directing the Department of Justice and Federal Trade Commission to establish task force on anti-competitive behavior in the food supply chain. The order directs them to specifically look at whether control of food-related industries by foreign entities is increasing the cost of food products in the United States or creating a national or economic security threat to Americans. The task force are expected to be ready to brief congressional leaders within 6 months. The order calls on the DOJ to pursue criminal charges if it finds evidence of price fixing in the U.S. food industry. Of the big four meat packers, 2 are subsidiaries of Brazilian companies, and Smithfield is controlled by China's WH Group. Stay tuned. We'll be back with today's weather next here on the Ohio AgNet.
When you combine the advanced technology of Enlist E3 soybeans with Seed Consultants' dedication to performance in the Eastern Corn Belt, it's a simply better experience. Our Seed Consultants brand soybeans are hand-selected, tested, and proven to perform in your conditions, backed by the local knowledge of Seed Consultants sales professionals. Bind to better soybeans with reliability and results packed into every variety. Visit seedconsultants.com.
Attention farmers, a big part of the Keystone Cooperative Advantage is reinvesting in the business to better serve farmer members. That's why Keystone is partnered with Purple Wave for their December 10th agricultural auction featuring equipment in Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio. Fine field-ready sprayers, rogators, and semis, all selling at absolute no reserve. This is your genuine opportunity to enhance your operation with quality machinery. Visit purplewave.com today. Purple Wave Auction. Straight, simple, sold.
You're tuning in on the Ohio AgNet. Today's weather brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Cold air trying to dominate the landscape. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that Ohio Ag weather update. In the cold air, we've got multiple Clipper-like systems trying to work through our region. Let's start with what's going on here today. That Clipper's trying to move through parts of Michigan. We're feeling the effects of clouds down here. I won't rule out a few flurries in northern parts of Ohio, US 30 northward. Clouds all the way down into central parts of the state, but I don't think today's a big deal. And then we start to see warmer air lift up overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. That's going to affect a large part of Ohio, maybe even seeing some snow melt ahead of our next Clipper that comes down. Slightly farther south track, I am looking at snows down all the way into central parts of Ohio, particularly as we head through Wednesday midday and afternoon. Coating to a couple of inches are likely there. Colder air reasserts itself for Wednesday night through Thursday, a brutal Arctic push there. I think that triggers a lot of lake effect cloud cover and some flurries here and there across the state, but no new frontal boundary complexes coming through. Moving forward to Friday, that's where Clipper number 3 comes in, gives us all a good chance of snow, particularly as we move through Friday midday, afternoon, and overnight. Final system comes through lightly on Saturday night into Sunday. A few flurries and maybe a coating to an inch or two in the northern part of Ohio there. Still looking at some very cold Arctic air, but that wants to shift as we move into next week. Next week, we see a big surge of southwest flow coming in. Rain likely on Monday into early Tuesday, and then we stay mild through the rest of next week. I think we could go through some significant snow melt with the additional rain. Right now, I'm going to put your odds at a white Christmas across most of Ohio, all the way down at about 20%. That's it. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Well, the USDA reorganization will finish next year. USDA Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden said the reorganization of more than half the current USDA staff in the Washington, D.C. area to 5 regional hubs across the country will be finished by 2026. In comments to AgriPulse, Vaden said the reorganization process, led by Vaden, will have moved over 2,000 USDA employees to 5 cities, including Raleigh, North Carolina, Kansas City, Missouri, Indianapolis, Indiana, Fort Collins, Colorado, and Salt Lake City, Utah. However, reports that several provisions in the recently passed agriculture funding bill may make it harder to implement the USDA's reorganization plans. Several provisions require the agency to get congressional approval before closing field offices of the Natural Resources Conservation Services, Rural Development, and the Farm Service Agency county offices or farm loan offices. While recent advancements in the Christmas tree industry is providing producers with more diverse product and consumers with greater choice during the holiday season. Rod Bain from the U.S. Department of Agriculture has more.
Real Christmas trees remain popular for consumers, and according to Christmas tree farmer John Tillman, quite a few changes have occurred in his industry the last decade or so to meet consumer demand.
Some of the things that have really made our ability to grow trees easier is understanding what species are more tolerant for wetter ground, more tolerant that do not get a certain fungus or the bugs don't get in. So we're able to utilize more ground than we had before and get trees that need a little less attention.
In addition,
most Christmas tree seedlings are now coming from very specific seed zones or actually parent trees, where the seedlings I'm planting I know came from this seed orchard. And so most of the trees in there will have a very distinct genetic quality to them, whether it's color or needles, upright branching, things like that.
I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Thanks, Rod, for the update. Well, as farmers close out the 2025 season and start planning for 2026, one issue keeps rising to the top: input cost. Fertilizer prices, which came down after historic highs of 2022, are climbing again. Since January, phosphate prices have jumped nearly 36%, potash is up more than 20%, and nitrogen remains unpredictable, bouncing around with global energy prices, trade disruptions, and conflict overseas. For many operations, margins this year are tighter than ever. That pressure is pushing farmers to rethink how they manage fertility, and one of those areas getting a lot more attention is biological products. These include biostimulants and biopesticides, natural or microbe-based, designed to help plants use nutrients more efficiently, tolerate stress, or improve soil function. To learn more, you can find this full article today at ohioagnet.com. Well, big changes are coming to the cattle industry in Nebraska and beyond with the upcoming closure of Tyson's beef packing plant in Lexington. For local cattlemen like Craig Uden of Cozad, who has been sending cattle to the plant since it opened in 1990, the closure means added transportation costs as cattle will need to go to other plants for processing. He says he'll need to adjust by selling cattle to plants that focus on quality and yield, and by working with others in the region and national packers to fill demand. Livestock economist at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln says that the Lexington closure, along with Tyson's cutback to a single shift at its Amarillo, Texas plant, will reduce U.S. processing capacity by 7 to 9%. Lower cattle numbers combined with the efficient feeding practices and heavier weights have decreased packer profits, prompting these cutbacks. While temporary closures from fires or COVID-19 have occurred before, permanent plant closures are rare, with the last one in Texas back in 2013. Dennis notes that the news of the Lexington closure led to a drop in fed cattle prices, though prices are beginning to rebound as feedlots find ways to redirect cattle to other plants. He added that producers who rely on cash market will feel the biggest impact, and price risk management will be essential to protect investments. Well, the Ohio Sheep Improvement Association honored leaders, youth, and environmental stewards at the 2025 Buckeye Shepherd Symposium in Wooster on December 6th. Courtney Copeland was named the 2025 through 2026 Ohio Lamb and Wool Ambassador and will represent the state's lamb and wool industry at events throughout the year. 4 students also received OSIA scholarships for their commitment to the sheep industry, including Emma Brockman, Avery Schaffner, Madison Fian, and Eric Taylor. Tim Barnes received the Distinguished Service Award for decades of leadership and mentoring in Ohio's sheep community, while Robert Hendershot earned the Environmental Stewardship Award for his lifetime of promoting sustainable grazing and conservation practices. Finally, Bob and Donna Peters of Ansonia were honored with the Charles Boyles Master Shepherd Award, recognizing nearly 70 years of excellence in flock management and support for youth and new sheep producers. It was a day of celebrating the past, present, and future of Ohio's sheep industry. Stay tuned. We'll be back with your grain analysis and your overnight markets next here on the Ohio AgNet. Get the equipment and trucks you need at the Ritchie Brothers' next Great Lakes Regional event on December 16th and 17th. This absolute unreserved auction will feature online bidding, and items are located in Columbus, Chicago, and Detroit. Choose from close to 3,000 items, including a wide selection of construction equipment, semi-trucks, and more. Don't miss Ritchie Brothers' Great Lakes Regional event on December 16th and 17th. For more details, visit rbauction.com. Again, that's rbauction.com. It's now time for today's market analysis, which is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company, excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Call 574-566-2113 for information on soybean marketing to LDC. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets finished sharply in the red on Monday to kick off the work week, led by declines in soybeans down anywhere from 6 1/4 to 11.5 cents. Corn traded choppy to start the day, spent most of midday and afternoon in the red, finishing only a 0.5 to 1 lower, but it felt a lot worse during the day. Same thing on Chicago wheat. Meanwhile, Kansas City wheat, the hard wheat, was down a little bit stronger, and we saw a penny's worth of loss on the Minneapolis wheat as well. Reasons behind the move yesterday, well, there wasn't any one item that got us too super excited. Before we go any farther, we do need to talk about the fact that a aid package to farmers was brought up yesterday, an announcement coming out of USDA and the president, but we still don't have any significant details as to when and how. I'm sure your local ag media will work through that. It did not have any big impacts on the markets. We started the day yesterday with China's state trading enterprises getting in and maybe looking for some soybeans, but when the prices came back as expensive as they were, they kind of pushed that off for another time. Weekly export sales were slow in the week ending November 6th. Remember, we're continuing to get that backlog of information out here. The week ending November 6th sold just 19 million bushels on soybeans versus 46 the prior week. That included 8.5 million bushels sold to China. Sales data in the first week of November also reflected China's pledge to secure U.S. origin beans, but the rapid widening of Brazil's discount. Brazilian beans for January delivery in late October were offered at parity with the U.S. Gulf. Beans for January delivery in early November were offered below U.S. origin. So that really hasn't changed. We talked to you last week and the week before about the fact that most of these purchases as of late have felt more political in nature rather than being a good deal. The other thing that came out yesterday, USDA quietly published its baseline projections for crop year 26-27. It happened late last week, and it started to soak into the marketplace yesterday. Corn acreage is forecast to decline 2.7 million to 95 million. Now, that decline of 2.7 is if you believe that we were doggone close to 98 million this year, which nobody does. I'm not sure whether Rel will get the number that actually was planted this year, but still, 95 next year would be a solid amount of corn still, and soybean seedings are forecast to rise almost 4 million to 85. We'll see these numbers out by economists, if nothing else. We'll see what surveys say when we get solidly into next year. I'm Ryan Martin.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Now let's take a look at your overnight trade brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Let's start off with December corn, 437 3/4, up 1.5. March corn, 444.5, up 3/4. As we turn to soybeans, January, 1092.5, down 1 1/4. March soybeans, 1104 3/4, down a penny. And December wheat, 536, no change. As we turn to livestock from yesterday's close, December live cattle, 227.32, up 17 cents. February live cattle, 226.67, down 47 cents. December lean hogs, 82.30, up 65 cents. February lean hogs, 82.40, up 12 cents. March feeder cattle, 330.42, down $2.87. April feeder cattle, 329.72, down $2.50. And January class 3 milk is 15.18, down 4 cents. Thanks for joining us and have a great day, everyone. You're listening to the Ohio AgNet.